It is very difficult. We hope that one day the school gates will open. Can deprivation of education lead to an increase in poverty and unemployment? Yes, deprivation of education can cause poverty and people's hardship and destitution. Hello and good day to all dear viewers. Our program today is about the consequences and challenges faced by children in Afghanistan. Our guest today is Ms. Nazanin Fazli, an Afghan girl living in Afghanistan. Welcome, Ms. Nazanin. First, please introduce yourself briefly and tell us what grade you are in. Yes, hello and my respects to all the viewers and those watching me on social media. I send my regards. I was a 10th grade student before the Taliban came, and since I cannot go to school, I haven't finished school. I haven't completed the 10th grade. Why are thousands of girls and boys in Afghanistan deprived of the right to education today? Yes, you asked a very good question. Thousands and millions of girls and boys in Afghanistan live without education. In Afghanistan, it is very sad and heartbreaking. Well, there are many different reasons. It could be economic problems, family issues, and political problems, as the priority of knowledge, going to school, and receiving education is the right of every human being and individual in any society or country. When someone does not study, life becomes very difficult for that individual or child as they grow into an adult in the future. As I said, there are many different problems in Afghanistan that prevent children or teenagers from studying or getting an education. When a child cannot go to school, how does their future change? Well, it is very hard to say that when a child doesn't study and doesn't gain knowledge and learn, their future will change. It is very difficult to say it can change. Of course, changing it is very difficult and even impossible. Because, for example, every individual needs knowledge and education, because it is the fundamental right of every human being. Just as we exercise physically to build our bodies and stay healthy, knowledge and education can be a good exercise for a person's brain and mind. Because when they are able to study, they can change their way of thinking. They can have a better, more enlightened mind, solve their daily problems better, discover their talents, and progress. And it is very difficult for a human being to reach a place and succeed without knowledge and education. Does deprivation of education only affect the individual, or does it also impact a nation's future? Yes, knowledge and education not only have a significant impact on the individual or the teenager themselves but also on the future. It also impacts the future of a country and a society, as a country needs educated people with a lot of knowledge for the progress of that country and society. When you see that we cannot study and we cannot send our children to school, especially girls, well, how can we have female doctors or female teachers in the future, or for other reasons, if it's boys, we won't be able to have them either. A society in the future might have fewer doctors, fewer teachers, fewer leaders, and fewer engineers, and thousands of educated individuals who possess knowledge. Therefore, this has a role and a very important role in the progress of a country and a society. Well, what kind of problems do children who have been deprived of education face in their daily lives? Yes, children and also teenagers who cannot study and are left behind in terms of knowledge have many problems. As we see in Afghanistan, there are children who cannot study, don't go to school, and work as street vendors outside, or there are girls at home who cannot work, and they certainly need money for their personal expenses, and they cannot support their families. It is very hard to move forward without studying. Those children, for example, cannot progress without knowledge, and their lives are different. Well, if a generation is kept away from education, what consequences will it have for Afghanistan? Yes, if a generation is left behind in education, it has a major impact on a society in the following years. For example, as I mentioned earlier, when you don't study, a few years later there will certainly be fewer doctors in that country, fewer teachers and engineers, and thousands of things a country needs to have for its development and progress will be missing. For that reason, that country heads towards stagnation and slows down, and it is likely to face many hardships, becoming more backward compared to other countries in the world. Well, that's right. What responsibility do the international community and educational institutions have toward children deprived of education? But the international community. Educational institutions play very important roles, yet they remain silent. They have the power to create change by establishing educational centers right here in Afghanistan, in the society we live in, and by supporting people who are economically weak, for instance, by creating free, no-cost educational institutions where children and families can go for their education. These play a very significant and high-impact role. Well, how can families support their children's education even in the most difficult circumstances? Yes, our country may be very low in terms of knowledge and economy, but we can still say that when a family stands by their children and teenagers, nothing else can bring them down or lower their standards. For example, a mother or father, the parents, can support their child emotionally and mentally. Even if they don't have money, they can provide support. For example, by bringing books to study at home and ensuring the home environment is peaceful and calm for the children's studies. Can deprivation of education lead to an increase in poverty and unemployment? Yes, deprivation of education can lead to poverty and the hardships of the people will increase day by day. As I mentioned before, when a society cannot study, how can a child or teenager without education be able to continue their studies and live a better life? With education, they can discover their skills and talents, head toward work and success, and earn income for their family and themselves. Economically, it plays a very important role. Indeed. Right. What are the aspirations of the children and teenagers who have been deprived of going to school? Well, for all of them. All the children and teenagers who don't go to school, including myself, who cannot study or finish school, it is very hard. We hope that one day the school gates will open, and we will be able to go to school and continue our studies, go to university, and discover our talents and skills for our own progress, to be a source of pride for our parents and to serve our society. If the opportunity for education were provided to Afghan children today, what would Afghanistan look like in 10 years? Yes, if today we had the opportunity to continue our education and seek knowledge. I can say this with certainty and confidence that in the next 10 years you mentioned, we can have a better society. Because we can have a more educated, stronger, more motivated, and advanced society where every human, child, and teenager can possess the knowledge to change and progress their community. Can a bright future be imagined for Afghanistan while millions of children and teenagers are deprived of their basic right to education? A country and a society need education, schooling, and science to be able to progress. Well, because of that, it is very difficult, but we still have hope, and we have not lost hope in God, and we never will. Because we hope that one day the doors will open for us, and these current conditions will not remain forever. Thank you, Ms. Nazanin, for giving us your time and coming to our program. You're welcome. Thank you for giving me your time and conducting this interview. Have a good time, thank you. Until the next program, goodbye.